We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, July 14, 2024, as we record this episode. To be more specific, it's around 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time as we record this show, as the All-Star break has arrived, and it starts with the Major League Baseball draft. With the 5th overall pick, the Chicago White Sox selected the player James Fegan wanted, with left-handed pitcher Hagen Smith out of Arkansas. In this episode, we'll share our thoughts about the first-round pick, and if they are announced while we are recording this episode, the White Sox picks 43 and 68. With the addition of Smith, questions do arise, especially about what the future holds for Garrett Crochet, as he only pitched 2 innings against Pittsburgh. The latest intel suggests MLB teams are balking at Chris Getz's asking price. There's also Luis Robert, who continues to build up good games, but those performances are not resulting in victories as the White Sox enter the All-Star break with the worst record ever. They are now 27 and 71, and they have a negative 177 run differential. Lots to discuss, but first, let's share our live reaction to the White Sox drafting Hagen Smith with the 5th overall pick from our MLB draft watch party. You know, for the longest of time, we've been told that Sox Machine, and even Jim Callis confirmed with the information that he's heard, that the White Sox were leaning towards taking a position player because their concern was in upcoming trades that they would just not be able to get top-end position players in return for Garrett Crochet, Luis Robert, or Eric Fetty, because teams just holding on to their top position player prospects, that they would have to draft those position players if they want to add them to the farm system. I would be in favor of the White Sox drafting Hagen Smith, though, Jim, because, again, I think Hagen Smith could be a frontline starter. The White Sox have had, even this season, despite on how awful this season has been for the White Sox, I think that there have been enough improvements on the development front with pitchers where you could point to and say that whatever Brian Bannister is doing has been working.
Here we go.
The 5th pick of the 2024 MLB draft, the Chicago White Sox select Hagen Smith, a left-handed pitcher from the University of Arkansas.
What? Yeah, I will say about Smith, I like him as a pitcher more than I like the position players left as position players. So in terms of like what they're supposed to do, I like his potential to make a smooth matriculation and have a spot in the White Sox rotation versus like hoping that Caglione's got the chase concerns don't transfer to the majors, that Griffin's swing has to be tweaked beyond the White Sox ability to do so. Same thing, Montgomery being kind of just corner outfield only. Like, I like Smith's possibility of reaching his top end better than the position players doing the same.
Joining me now are Sox Machine's beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And gentlemen, welcome. Jim, I thought you made a good point in the live stream that we just heard. You have more confidence that Hagen Smith can meet his potential than the available position players when it was the White Sox turn to pick. But many White Sox fans, like their instant reaction, especially the Sox Machine comments, a little bit different than ours. They're very either angry or confused, maybe both, that the organization, which desperately needs more bats in the system, and they passed on bats in Jack Caglione, JJ Weatherholt, and Connor Griffin. How do you, Jim, try to sell this pick to White Sox fans that are angry about bypassing a bat?
That was my reaction too, in a way, was, oh, I wish it were a bat. Just because watching the minor league box scores over the last couple weeks since Birmingham was broken up and, Kannapolis has had a couple guys promoted and they're starting to cool off a little bit. You can see the shortage of runs up and down the lineup, and we're not even talking about what we're watching at the major league level, which is very few runs scored, very little impact power, poor execution with runners in scoring position. So I wanted a bat too. I just didn't see one that I could see like the White Sox developing all the way through. I mean, like Caglione, interesting, but the chase rate's kind of worrisome. And we've seen the White Sox, struggle to develop, bat first profiles, and then also, accumulate too many of them that are stuck at first base. So I could see that leading to a familiar end, and same thing with like a high school pick. So when evaluating the entire body of potential top 15 position players, I just didn't see any that like the White Sox could feel great about developing. So when it came to Smith, who looks like he's a starter, looks like he has a very traditional power major league fastball slider combination. So it's not like Carson Fulmer where he gets a lot of his effectiveness out of like a really quick twitch delivery that is not repeatable. And they don't know whether it's going to be a starter or reliever risk. Like the major league profile is already there to where like, yeah, I get it. Watching him pitch, reading the reports, I get him. So I can understand with number 5 overall pick needing to nail it, needing to get some major league value out of it. Cause we've seen the toll that it takes when you don't get value out of it, like with Andrew Vaughn and Nick Madrigal, that, yeah, it's a easy way to just all of a sudden lose any momentum you had in building a pipeline. So I get it. It's not the most exciting one just because the White Sox actually have decent starting pitching, even at the major league level. They're getting decent performances from their rotation, but you have to, you can't trade up, you can't trade back. So that being the case, if they have to pick 5th, I think he's a decent use of that 5th pick.
James, you got a chance to participate in Hagen Smith's Zoom call. We'll have the audio, share that in a moment in the podcast. This is your guy, though, James. I asked you in the last episode, who did you want the White Sox to take 5th overall? You didn't think that they would do this, but they did. So what's your reaction to the White Sox taking Hagen Smith 5th overall?
Those cretins put me on the spot. I was supposed to skate clear of accountability. And now I'll be linked with this young man and his fate for the next 15 years.
I hope so. If he lasts 15 years, that's a great career. He was a great major leaguer.
Well, I mean, people still bring up Jared Mitchell, I think is what he's saying.
Oh, was that your guy too?
No, just in terms of like draft picks that don't make it.
Oh.
I think at number 5, and Shirley even said it as, it's kind of like a 90s detective movie where now I think of all these hints he dropped in his presser that showed who the real killer was all along. But he said that like you don't draft for an organizational need at that high. So yeah, just seeing what they thought was most valuable, highest ceiling, combination of feeling good about his developmental path. Brian Bannister said in June, give me every power lefty, tall, with the angle that you can get. Like the ceilings in those so high that you'll wait as long as you need to developmentally on him. And he's not a guy who necessarily projects right now. Things can happen as to being a huge developmental project. So I think there's a lot of reason to think like them hitting on this as high profile or high probability as much as it can be. And, as far as like addressing the lack of bats in the system, that's still something that needs to occur, and can occur over the course of the body of the draft and not necessarily at number 5, where it has to be defined so narrowly in that way. So I think just a good player that they think they can develop, which, they must be confident in, I think justifies itself, even if from an organizational standpoint, you kind of look at it as it's not like the answer to all our prayers, literally seemingly the lefty they produce every 3 years. But you can only produce a dominant lefty every few years by continuing to draft and develop him. And, I don't think anyone should mind about the White Sox going with what they're good at.
Hagen Smith had a Zoom conference Sunday night, which James Fegan was able to join and represent Sox Machine for. Smith shared what his experience was like with the White Sox prior to draft night.
Yeah, I was kind of in shock, honestly. You dream about it growing up, especially in college. That's the goal, to be drafted in the first round for a bunch of my friends and I for sure. So just hearing my name be called, it was kind of surreal, honestly. Yeah, so honestly, I really didn't have that much idea going into it. I mean, I talked to him in the past, maybe a few weeks ago, leading up to the draft, but nothing really until honestly the phone call right before the pick from my agent. And it's one of those things it's hard to remember because you kind of black out a little bit just because you've been dreaming about it forever. So I'm super happy. I met with him at one time before the draft, 2-3 weeks ago in Omaha, actually. And just really, I loved everything they were saying, and really loved everything they were talking about the program and the city.
Smith also shared what he knew about the White Sox organization prior to getting drafted, and how the current Arkansas Razorbacks on the team have reached out after being selected 5th overall.
Yeah, just the young core guys that have, especially you want to talk about left-handed pitchers that have an organization. It's kind of crazy with Crochet and Noah Schultz. I know I kind of keep up with Major League Baseball a little bit, so I know quite a bit. Not quite a bit, but I know some of the guys in the organization, especially the guys that played at Arkansas. So I've had a few of those guys that played at Arkansas that are with the White Sox that have texted me.
The best pitching performance I saw from the 2024 college season was Smith dominating Oregon State and number 1 overall pick Travis Bazzana, striking out Bazzana 3 times. Smith shared what that experience was like for him personally.
Yeah, that was a really crazy game. It's hard to remember because in the moment, you're just kind of locked into the game, so you don't really realize what's actually happening until I didn't realize until after I got pulled from the game that I had that many strikeouts, and I was like, "What in the world?" So I was just kind of shocked after that.
Jack Caglione was taken with the next pick to Kansas City. J.J. Weatherholt, the pick after, to St. Louis. Connor Griffin was taken 9th overall. As a matter of fact, after the White Sox selected Hagen Smith, the next 9 picks were bats, either college or on the prep level. The prep level, it was just Connor Griffin and Bryce Renier. That was expected. So there was a pretty lengthy run on college bats all the way to pick 15 before Seattle selected another pitcher. And we talked about this, the White Sox, I think, went in the direction of maybe they thought that Hagen Smith was the best player available on their board. They know that they could sign Hagen Smith because there's no point in drafting Hagen Smith 5th overall if you don't think you can sign him. And the best player that they can develop. I like this pick. I think Hagen Smith can join the White Sox rotation sooner than later. I don't think it's going to be like a Paul Skeens situation where he's part of the White Sox starting rotation in May of 2025, but maybe we see Hagen Smith in August or
starting
September.
the All-Star game.
Starting the All-Star game. Yeah, I don't want to put that pressure on
James said he's going to start the All-Star game.
I think it's good that Caglione went to the Royals immediately picked after, so that if they passed on a generational hitter that the White Sox fans have grown attached to, they'll just immediately think about him dominating an AL Central rival, taking the very next pick after. Even going 8th would take a little bit of the catharsis at it, but one pick later, if he haunts them for generations, really narratively a perfect draft.
I became upset when the Red Sox drafted Braden Montgomery and he entered on the mobility scooter and then started walking, because I would have loved writing about how he was the opposite of Courtney Hawkins.
No backflip.
No backflip. Just proving he can walk. Fundamentals.
Now, almost instantly after Hagen Smith was taken, and even I had the same thought, many were, boy, the White Sox found their Garrett Crochet replacement. And that's a good way to transition as while we're recording this, again, pulling back the curtain, the White Sox haven't made their 43rd pick yet. And when they do, we'll talk about in this episode, but it'll be like our live reaction that we'll be recording. Bob Nightingale of USA Today in his Sunday column had additional notes regarding the White Sox. He wrote in his first note, the San Diego Padres made an offer for Garrett Crochet. I think that's been known for a while, but the White Sox quickly dismissed the Padres offer. But Nightingale writes, while rival general managers are uncertain now whether Crochet will be dealt, the White Sox still fully intend to move him. And his second note was regarding Luis Robert, which we'll talk about in a moment. But James, starting with Crochet and his status, so he just threw 2 innings on Friday. I get that Pedro said there was going to be a short outing. I didn't think it was going to be that short. He'll pitch. We think he'll pitch during the All-Star game on Tuesday, but that won't be very long. And then Crochet's going to miss the entire Kansas City series when we are there for our annual road trip, and he's expected to pitch the 5th game after the All-Star break, which is Tuesday, July 23rd, in Texas, where he's going to be pitching the All-Star game, but this time it's going to be against the Rangers. Unless Crochet gets dealt by then. So, James, help me understand. Are the White Sox really trying to save bullets for Crochet because this is his first year starting? Or are the White Sox trying to avoid an injury mishap that ruins any of their plans before the trade deadline?
Garrett kind of posed it as this was a choice that was presented to him between skipping starts or staying on routine. And his preference was to stay on routine and kind of keep getting hot, throwing pens, getting ready on a 5-day basis, and then he just doesn't go that long rather than not having to adjust for a 10-day routine or whatever kind of other like college setup that he didn't seem to be didn't feel like it prepared him for what he wants to do in subsequent seasons as well. I think on that basis, that's fine. And, they don't really want to stretch him out beyond like what he'd throw in a pen. In this case, this is around 30 pitches. It seems like something he's on board for and has kind of made his choice with. So I don't feel like it's them acting weirdly because they kind of have to act in conjunction with what his camp, and it's a pretty, it's not, he's with a major agency. And I feel like a lot of people reviewed what he's doing and what the progression is going to be outside of just the White Sox kind of, in uncharted territory as they talk about a lot. So I think it's fine. I don't think, I'm sure, yes, it dovetails well with setting him up to pitch the All-Star game, but I don't think that was like, if I don't think they would have done that to Eric Fetty or anything, just because games don't matter or anything like that, or we don't want to break them. So yeah, there's kind of always a concern, but without any specific indicators or any reason to really be concerned about them, it's kind of part of a plan they've been talking about a lot of being shorted outings. I mean, the idea that he would, out of the bullpen just to control his workload would be an option was something that was being talked about, back in April or maybe even spring training. So this seems in kind with that enough, and he seems happy with it. It doesn't seem that shady or goofy to me.
But James, the gamblers. I was looking at the mentions about all the angry bettors in your mentions who had the over on Crochet.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the gamblers. No.
Won't anybody think of the gamblers?
Yep.
They're in distress. Their messages sound very frantic and worried. I fear for all these people who have subtly been made deeply unwell by Garrett Crochet not hitting his over on strikeouts.
Well, so the expectation then, I'm assuming that in Kansas City he's going to throw another bullpen, so he at least stays fresh and in rhythm. So even though he's not going to pitch in that series, he's still remaining active, right?
Yeah, I mean, it would be typical just to, if he's starting second game at Texas, that he would be throwing a bullpen either the second or last day in Kansas City. So that would be in keeping with that.
The reason I ask these questions, James, because I thought J.J. Cooper back in May for Baseball America, even though a lot of the quotes are from Kyle Bodie, Driveline, I know that's controversial. People don't necessarily see eye to eye with him. But I thought Cooper made a good point that even if you try to reduce the innings or pitch count, that doesn't necessarily mean the pitchers are going to reduce the intensity. And that intensity ramp up could be just as dangerous, injury risk wise, as just continuing to push Garrett Crochet 90 to 100 pitches every single outing, with him being a starter for the first time, full time, and a couple seasons after a pretty significant injury. So I'm curious on how this goes. There's no magic bullet, right? We've been talking about this particular topic on how to keep pitchers healthy for a decade plus, and there's really no right way to go about it. I was just curious on how the White Sox are handling Crochet.
So from Garrett's perspective, is that something he wants to build the stamina of? Is that intensity buildup? Like, he's going to have a full season. He needs to basically ramp up for a start. Counting spring training, counting playoffs, 35 to 40 times, theoretically a healthy year. He wants to build up those reps of doing that, even if you're making a compromise of trying to take off some strain by not having, high intensity pitches when you're 60, 80, 100 deep, taking that at least off his plate. No, it's not a cure-all. No, it does not save him from injury, but it's trying to split the difference between building up the stamina for the level of stress, the level of just, the level of physical horror that's involved in, being a major league starter, and not doing things that are unnecessary or just not called upon, both for the fact that you don't want to unnecessarily risk him for injury, or you want to, create some sort of bridge to his old workloads to now, but also, White Sox competitively are obviously not providing any incentive for stretching Garrett Crochet at any real level at all.
Right. Yeah.
As we watch every day.
Well, Jim, if Crochet gets traded, though, that team that acquires Crochet will probably want that intensity because they're in postseason contention. So they need Garrett Crochet, the guy that earned his All-Star nod, not necessarily giving him the month of August off, and then, then we need you out of the bullpen. Because that obviously impacts the price that they're willing to pay to acquire Garrett Crochet. And I wanted your thoughts because, Jim, I think you do the best of breaking down what Bob Nightingale is actually writing. So what do you make of Bob's rumor when he writes that rival GMs are still skeptical, but the White Sox they have the intent to move Crochet? Should we lower the odds on our trade probability of a Crochet trade happening before the deadline based on what Nightingale wrote?
It feels to me like the way that Getz said that he wasn't going to trade Dylan Cease, or you're comfortable going into the season without him or without a trade and going with him every 5 days until the trade deadline, the next acquisition period, because of just didn't want to give away any leverage. So that's how it strikes me, is all of the writing on the wall suggests that now is the best time to deal him, or like the most advantageous, just because of how well he's performing. The amount of buyers there should be for a pitcher like him, even if he is throwing in shorter appearances. And then just, having that playoff burst, whether out of the rotation or out of the bullpen, and then going into next year with the full idea of what he can do, and having a team having its own program for how it wants Crochet to proceed. So it strikes me as leverage, or trying to maintain their leverage, because they don't have to deal him if they're getting just crappy offers. Like, you don't want to see the White Sox trade him for anybody. So yeah, like seeing Cease go through the winter and the White Sox not getting an offer they wanted, doesn't make sense to, have to deal him. So I think it's more or less stating the premise that the White Sox still have Crochet under control, and they can't sell him for nothing. So that's how I take it.
And as we recording this, the White Sox did make their second round pick 43. They took high school shortstop from Michigan, Caleb Bonemer. And I'm pleasantly surprised with this pick. I didn't think Bonemer would make it to the White Sox at pick 43 because he had a huge perfect game showcase last summer where he was posting multiple exit velocities greater than 100 miles an hour. He actually averaged exit velocities of 100 miles an hour in that showcase, and he also ran a 60-yard dash at 6.35 seconds. So athletically, very similar 60-yard dash as Connor Griffin that went 9th overall, and he was a Virginia commit. Scored very high rankings, 18 years old, doesn't turn 19 for a couple more months. I like this pick a lot. This is someone that you can wish on, dream on for the White Sox. So for White Sox fans looking for bats as we're recording this Sox Machine podcast, Caleb Bonemer was the 44th ranked prospect in our top 100, but I was expecting him to go earlier because everybody loves high school shortstops or just shortstops in general, and there's very few in this particular draft. But I think this is a good get for the White Sox. So there you go. Jim, the White Sox get a bat.
Yeah, one with a longer developmental path, I think, which I think is maybe what, maybe White Sox fans might not want. I guess if you're looking at second round prep picks, Wes Kath might be the one, the most recent one that they have to overcome in terms of not getting much out of that. So worth going back to the well. And you'd mentioned that kind of prep picks were not really all that in demand this time around. So I am surprised that he did last the second round. I'm curious whether it's a money thing in terms of if the White Sox have more to offer him in the second round than other teams did, or whether it's a case of just the prep pool and the position player pool in general being so wide open that maybe rankings that you see over the course of, trying to form a consensus over the course of 5 or 6 different outlets and such, maybe vary wildly or differ greatly from how teams individually rank these guys.
Yeah, that's a good point, Jim, because Braylon Payne ranked 53rd in our top 100, went in the first round to Milwaukee. Dante Nori, who is part of my 10 players to watch from a White Sox perspective in rounds 2 and 3, 63rd in our top 100, went in the first round. And you also have our 22nd ranked high school or 22nd ranked prospect, prep pitcher William Schmidt, 2 hours before the draft, pulled out of the draft and committed to LSU. With this particular draft class, with so many saying that the prep pool is really shallow, in order to buy out the college commitments, especially in the NIL, the name, image, and likeness era of college sports, you have to spend pretty significant money. You have to spend a couple $1 million to buy out the college commitment. So that's probably why we're seeing, as we're recording this episode, a run on high school players that may die off after the third round, where we'll start seeing more of a run on college players. But then again, as we're recording this, the White Sox have one more pick on the opening night, pick 68. So if we're still talking when they get to that pick, we'll recap that as well. But so far, Hagen Smith for the Chicago White Sox at pick number 5, and pick 43, Caleb Bonemer, a prep shortstop from Michigan, ranked second actually from Perfect Game out of their shortstop rankings. So there you go. Now with Garrett Crochet and his trade status up in the air, to go back to that, what I'm a bit concerned about, there's the price that Chris gets once for Garrett Crochet. And whatever price is in his head, James and Jim, there's a part of me that's you should absolutely get it. Look at the performance that he had this year. Even me, the biggest hater of Garrett Crochet prior to this season, I've been won over. He can help in whatever role that you want in the postseason. He can help a team win the league's pennant and get you to the World Series. I think Garrett Crochet could definitely do that, and you have a chance to acquire someone who could be a frontline starter next year. But teams that are buying are like my friend Jim Margulis, who never wants to pay sticker price, who is willing to wait until they get to the price point that they are actually comfortable paying. And I guess how long should Crochet, or I should say Chris Getz, wait on a price or a deal for Garrett Crochet, Jim? Does he have to deal him before the deadline? We've always talked about that apex of a trade return, a possibility. If the White Sox want to get the most out of a trade for Garrett Crochet, do they have to trade him before the deadline, or can he wait until the offseason?
It feels like it. I think, the one complicating factor right now is the draft's going on. So I can see a lot of teams just not offering a whole lot in terms of, meat for reporters, any kind of momentum for a deal. There's no conversations probably being had, or a few conversations being had going into the All-Star break about acquiring starters, when probably all of the bandwidth right now is being spent on the draft. So I can see reheating old rumors and picking at them a little bit and trying to see if anything's still there, and there isn't. So you can kind of say that rumors, are at a standstill right now, and the White Sox have said that if nothing picks up, that they won't deal him. That's kind of how I'm reading these reports right now. So I would expect him to be moved by the deadline, and I can see interest picking up. However, if he doesn't move, you'd have to look at, did any other pitchers move? What were the price for those pitchers? Yeah. Is it all just, buying rentals and not offering any kind of, meaningful returns for those players. Nobody you'd feel, bad about parting with, like, 24-year-olds in AAA or 17-year-olds in the DSL, but just, nothing in between in terms of projectable talent. I think that could be a case of, where context has to decide what's happening. Because we saw that too in the offseason with Cease. Like, Corbin Burns got traded, but, I think Joey Ortiz has proven that I think he's overcome maybe a lot of the scouting reports. But it wasn't all that overwhelming of a return that the Brewers got for him at the time on paper. Like, it was fine. Same thing with the Cease trade. It was fine. But there weren't this whole groundswell of trades being made to where, like, the White Sox have to get on that. I think they waited as long as they could. And then it became a point where they took on more risk by retaining him than keeping him, so they got what they got. So that's why I think that Crochet's in a similar spot, but just a weird spot in the calendar right now to where who's really talking about trades right now to reporters, especially with the All-Star game going on. I could see a couple days afterwards, I'd expect it to heat up again.
This episode is brought to you by Game Time, an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. It's the All-Star break, but we at Sox Machine are gearing up for our annual road trip, this time to Kansas City. If you decide at the last minute to join us, awesome. If you need tickets, use Game Time to sit by us in Section 108 at Kauffman Stadium for the best deals. You could also use Game Time for other sporting events like the Chicago Sky, which those tickets are hard to come by these days. And football season is just around the corner with Chicago Bears preseason games now available on the app. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and use our promo code SOXMACHINE for $20 off. Game Time. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
We're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. Ditch the busy work. Use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences, so the more you use Indeed, the better it gets. Join more than 3.5 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed to hire great talent fast. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Just go to Indeed.com/Blue Wire right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. That's Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed.
Well, let's move over to Luis Robert. Robert had a good series against Pittsburgh. He went 5 for 11 in the 3 games. He had a couple of RBIs, 3 stolen bases. I think he reached 5 times on Sunday because he also drew 2 walks.
He did.
And Robert in July is hitting .318 with a .400 on base percentage and slugging .500. Now, if you read the pregame notes that James provides on SoxMachine.com, you would have learned on how Robert has cut down his chase rate and he's improving his ability to draw walks, which is great signs. And James, you got a chance to talk to Luis over the weekend. And again, you wrote about those quotes in the pregame notes on SoxMachine.com about his thoughts of where the team sees it is at and the team's chances of turning this organization around. But when you get a chance to talk to Luis, and obviously it's through a translator, do you get the impression that Luis doesn't think his tenure with the White Sox will be much longer?
Not specifics on that, just more like he knows it could end. He knows it's a possibility. He knows where they're at. He knows they're not in a competitive cycle right now. And it's kind of like a general preference. Like, yeah, I'd rather not be traded. Yeah, they gave me a shot. I appreciate it, but not like, certainly not, I'd sign myself to stay here type of energy. Just very like he's kind of aware of what's possibilities, and he'd rather not, but he's certainly prepared himself mentally for the possibility he could. Um, he said specifically he had not had any talks with Getz about like his status or anything like that. So
Okay.
I'm sure they know each other's name and whatnot, but I don't think like he was making it clear he hasn't had one of these like pull aside meetings like, hey, something's close, or hey, I just want to make you know where things stand, because it doesn't seem like things have gotten close enough to where that was necessary to talk to Robert about it.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, because Nightingale wrote the White Sox, who were uncertain that oft-injured center fielder Luis Robert would have a high enough trade value to move, now are cautiously optimistic they can trade him, and they're still open to moving anyone and everyone, believing that starter Eric Fedde should bring in a nice return too. I'm still kind of surprised Eric Fedde's around. Again, I'm just assuming that's going to happen before the end of the month, before the deadline, that Eric Fedde will be pitching for another team. But Bob Nightingale also wrote that Seattle, spoiling my idea, Jim, that the Mariners could be a good fit for Luis Robert. No, Seattle was in Miami to watch Jazz Chisholm. Jim, I'm going back to you to translate Bob Nightingale for me. Cautiously optimistic the White Sox are, so are we 50-50 that Luis Robert could be moved?
Feels like less, just because they don't have to move him. I can see teams still being a little bit skeptical that he can play 100 games in a season on a regular basis. So that's why like it feels this full season would probably be a better proving ground for Robert, just showing that he can get through the rest of the season fine. Then you have like 1.5 years of a solid body of work that you're trading him off of, versus 1 year plus a promising upswing and still a disappointing year. But given the lack of sellers, given Robert's cost control, and that he still has 3 years left in his deal, I can see him, that changing the calculus enough to where that's mistaken. That's why I'd say that's still a significant chance that he could, but I'd put it less than 50%, just because it feels like if teams are lowballing or not really wanting to mortgage a future for players that really don't if they can poke a hole in any player rather than trade somebody of meaningful value for him. I think there are a lot of holes in Robert's game you could poke, at least when it comes to the durability issue, because I think he's closing up that plate discipline hole a little bit, maybe because he's getting so few pitches to hit that it's pretty easy for him to draw walks. But if this is the case where he's actually holding his ground in the batter's box and walks are going to be average at the very least, that'd be kind of cool. And then really you just have how many games can he play in a season, and then can he do it again? And that's why I think like one more year of him being 5-win player or close to it probably moves the needle, but maybe teams will be motivated to think that, getting him at 90 cents on the dollar is, maybe they're saying that maybe they're trying to get him for 75 cents a dollar, but maybe they'll up it to 90. And maybe the White Sox will think that's good enough, because all it takes is one injury again to knock that price lower.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. I was going to ask you, do you think Chris Getz would accept 90 cents of the dollar in exchange for Luis Robert?
It's possible, just because, they might feel he's a depreciating asset in a way, or just kind of like the Nick Madrigal thing when they traded him when he got hurt, just because he really couldn't absorb many more injuries to his profile and still be an above average player. And I think history bore that out. Robert's definitely got more talent to work with. He does not have Madrigal's frame issue or anything like that. So it's not quite that dire, but he only gets more expensive, and if the games played continues to be underwhelming, I can see 90 cents on the dollar being $1 on the dollar, or just a dollar being worth less a year from now.
Got it. He's running, James. He's stealing bases at will, it seems. So he's got to be 100% healthy. Like, this is the Luis Robert we saw last year. He's having a really strong month.
He said as much. He said he's been running and not having any soreness afterwards. I believe that was a couple of weeks ago. Really, it's about And I think we're still in just seeing him like hit a lot of singles. I think it's a good side of that trajectory that he's having like these kind of solid at bats where he's making good swing decisions pretty often. But I still don't think we're seeing him on like a nuclear hot heater where he's like hitting 3 bombs a week or anything like that. That's something he had for stretches of last year. But I think he's physically he's stated he's all good. I think there's still a level of like whether it's just him being hot or cold, but I think like and tapping to his power and kind of consistently getting balls up front where he lifts them. I think there's still a little bit to go, but in terms of what we were talking about a month ago, where it's like getting people to buy on this kind of project or something that's kind of like we're still this house that we're currently trying to stand back up and saying that the raw ingredients are great versus now you're kind of seeing an operation where I could say like we're getting a guy if we trade for him who's going to step in and help right away and not take like 2-3 weeks to find it again while the fans boo him and wonder why we like gave up our top 2 prospects for him. It seems like it's a more palatable version of Luis Robert that you got right now.
He looks like blissfully disconnected from the rest of the White Sox in terms of what they're doing. Like he's taking walks, he's hitting the occasional homer, he's making plays, he's not making the plays he doesn't feel like he needs to make, and being okay with the brush back. He looks like he's just playing his game. Kind of like the way you mentioned Dylan Cease kind of floating through the clubhouse, feeling great about what he's doing, even though everything else is kind of falling down around him. I'm getting the same vibes a little bit from Robert, at least on the field.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good comparison. And I think it's pretty like on point from what he said of like, yeah, it was fun back in the days when we were good back in 2021. Hasn't been that way in a while, but I still got to do my job.
Still have to be more absurdly talented than anybody else on this roster and make everybody look bad by comparison.
Yeah, I mean,
shrug.
I played in the minors. What difference is that from this?
I mean, speaking of bad, I mean, I know there's been a pretty hot topic on Sox Machine comparing Gavin Sheets and Eloy Jimenez. They're both bad. Eloy, though, had an RBI single. I think even Gavin Sheets drove in a run. Andrew Benintendi hit a home run. See? Things are on the up.
Eloy hit an RBI single after he had grounded out with the bases loaded, or grounded the double play.
We are focusing on the positives, James.
Really kind of already taken the air out of the crowd by that point when he got that RBI knock.
And Benintendi gave away 2 runs on his homer with a bad dive.
He didn't have to dive, just run through the ball.
Sometimes we can be a prisoner to vibes, but I'm telling you from the in-game result, Eloy getting that RBI single in the 4th at bat just did not pack the punch. That's some of the early results. In terms of, you never get a second chance to make a first impression. I would say that was true with the 14,000 or so in attendance on Sunday.
I'll take Luis's 900 OPS, though. So thank you, Luis, for being a bright spot in the White Sox offense and just the White Sox overall, as they are 27-71 at the All-Star break. I'm pretty confident we're never going to see a team this bad again, but I also don't want to challenge that statement going into next year for the White Sox. So we'll just leave it at that. Yeah, 98 games into the season, the White Sox are 27-71. They have lost 7 of their last 8 games. So let's stop talking about the White Sox, and if they get to pick 68 during this last segment, we'll talk about the White Sox 3rd pick in the opening day of the Major League Baseball draft. But let's talk about what is catching our attention around Major League Baseball. James, I'll start with you, man. What's catching your attention around the league?
I mean, the way the Yankees blew that game to Baltimore was certainly eye-popping in terms of watching an outfielder fall down as the other team walks off. Definitely feel like if that exact series of events has not happened, like you could easily create like an AI template of like that shows me the game and like it created the events artificially, but I'd look at it and be like, oh yeah, I remember the game, I covered it. Like even though it hasn't actually happened to the White Sox.
Well, didn't that happen in the Giants-Twins game? Like, didn't Mike Yastrzemski win it, walk it off at a Little League home run because outfielder fell for the Twins?
Did that happen like today?
Today, yeah, Sunday. I have to rewatch the replay.
The Giants Twins game I saw was Blake Snell is back and they're in commanding lead. So From a White Sox perspective, does the Cubs resurgence maybe take a seller off the market?
I don't
Seemingly
know.
unlikely to me, but they literally played their way out of selling last July. It could be something. I don't think that sort of groundswell seems to be happening in Toronto, but anywhere that it happens, it seems like it helps to some degree. So I'm rooting for every kind of cruddy within 5 games of 500 team to get hot and take themselves out of the running. So maybe the White Sox are helping their own case by not playing their best baseball, even in a really bad season against Pittsburgh. Try to make everyone as irrationally confident as you can.
Yeah, help out your own market. How about you, Jim? What's catching your attention around baseball?
Speaking of brutal blown games, the Dodgers had a couple of really
Sure did.
terrible ones, and Yamamoto's in the 60-day injured list. There's still nobody pressing them in the NL West. Looking at the standings, the Diamondbacks are 7 games back, but still 500. They're in that glut of 500 teams that can't get away from 500. So it's hard to know if there will be any consequences, but they are playing a pretty ragged brand of baseball right now, kind of running alongside the Yankees in terms of even the records are pretty much similar. Hitting a wall at the same time, and some questions about their depth rotationally. Mookie Betts' injury made their offense a lot less special, so they're a little bit just in relative shambles compared to their usual standards. And so I'll be interested to see how they rebound out of that. I'm also following the Oakland stuff pretty closely. We talked about this a little bit on the live stream about how the move to Sacramento, and just looking at the brutal temperatures, 110, 115 degrees in Sacramento and in California, and the union talking about how, can players play in the morning to avoid playing in direct sunlight, because most minor league games are at night, but even then, it's pretty rough, and minor league games usually move quicker. So, and their workloads are more managed in the minors. So you don't have to worry about necessarily the toll that major leaguers would face under pressure of major league games and workloads and such. So that move keeps looking more and more ill-advised. There still isn't any kind of progress towards the stadium in Las Vegas. And I watching the Utah ownership kind of seize the Arizona Coyotes, and all of a sudden Utah has a hockey team now. I wonder if we're going to see something similar with Major League Baseball, just saying this has gone too long. Utah's got an ownership group. Sorry, John Fisher, please sell.
If anyone is going to move to another market, and if it's not going to be Vegas, I'm with you. I think it could be Salt Lake City.
But I think Oakland makes sense just because Arizona, they're playing a 5,000 capacity arena with the Coyotes, and so they just weren't a major league NHL market. And Oakland's kind of the same thing right now. They've run themselves out of being a major league market just with the way they've completely abused their fan base. But the way things run now, the ratings they draw, the attendance they draw is not reflective of major league market. So going to a ascendant but still small Salt Lake City market makes more sense for that kind of move versus taking a team out of Chicago to Salt Lake City, which is really the fundamental element that doesn't make sense with any White Sox location. Is just basically having the franchise value because you're taking it out of a huge market, and then you're seeding that market for any other kind of development, because the Cubs can just pretty much block anything you try to put back in there.
That's a good point. Yeah, Tony Clark, his comments, we need to have these conversations yesterday. I'm sure those are going to go great between the league and trying to get the Players Association on board with whatever the hell is going to happen in Sacramento. Should we send James to Sacramento next season so he can be on the ground to give us reports on what baseball is like in Sacramento?
After that ACL game, I'm ready for anything.
The thing I'm watching for around Major League Baseball is all of a sudden the American League standings have gotten very tight. In the American League East, the Orioles just have a 1-game lead over the New York Yankees, and the Seattle Mariners just have a 1-game lead over the Houston Astros. But don't overlook what's going on in Boston, Minneapolis, and with the Texas Rangers, the defending American League champs. The Red Sox are now just 4.5 games back of Baltimore and 3.5 games back of the Yankees. The Twins are just 4.5 games back of the Guardians. And the Rangers have won 7 of their last 10 games, so they are now 5 games back of Seattle. So Seattle had this huge lead that has really just evaporated on them, and I think they got to do something, not only just to win the division, but avoid finishing in third, because we know that so many players are coming back for the Rangers here. So the Red Sox, Twins, Rangers, out of these 3 teams pitching to you guys, Jim, I'll start with you. Which of these teams do you think are more serious about challenging for the division lead?
I think the Twins, maybe just because of the Guardians, like just resources. I can see the Twins having a little bit more depth, a little bit more creativity with moving guys around their lineup and helping patch holes that way, and maybe having enough to add at the deadline. Whereas the Guardians, they've been good, but the way they've been good with how jealously they protect leads and the depth of their bullpen, sometimes that can turn on a team. So I think in terms of if this were, say, a 200 game season, I think I'd have a lot more faith in the Twins doing it. Just a matter of like whether those differences will reveal themselves over the remainder of the 162 game season. That's in doubt because the Guardians, 4.5 is not a big lead nor a small lead. It's just a decent, respectable lead. But the Red Sox, chasing both the Orioles and Yankees, I can see them having the resources. And the Red Sox have been weird about how much they've been willing to spend, and the Rangers have pulled back, and they're kind of counting on some, rehabbing players who might not be able to withstand the grind of, getting back in there and delivering what they had been delivering. So I can see like the Rangers playing more for next year and kind of coasting on the honeymoon period of their title, and the Red Sox just still being in this very cost-conscious mode that they can't quite catch up to what the Orioles and Yankees are doing. I can see the Yankees falling out of it because they too are in cost-cutting mode, and maybe the Orioles just gain separation from both.
How about you, James? Out of the Red Sox, the Rangers, and Twins, who do you think is the more serious to contend for the division title?
I'd say the Red Sox are on a good run, and they just said that they're probably going to buy. But I would say the Twins. I don't know exactly like where they'll get more pitching. It's not like maybe Festa can like come in and like help right away, but that didn't necessarily show like a sign that he would do that in the little cup of coffee he's gotten. Their previous attempts to add pitching at the deadline have been kind of shambolic for whatever reason, and I don't know what they necessarily have to do to get Pablo Lopez to look better. But their offense is very legit, and I feel like it clearly has like a higher floor when they're even at their worst than the Guardians. So I feel like if they're able to provide any upgrade or get just more stability from their rotation in the second half, I feel like they definitely have the bats to go on a run. With Brian Buxton being a lot better than he was in the first couple of weeks and months, and Brooksley kind of coming in and helping right away, and even not being at full health, like theoretically they will get another at least some stint of Royce Lewis both being back and going nuclear again before the end of the final 6 months. That could help them kind of put on a late push. And I'm not trying to like delegitimize, but what the Guardians are doing, like by saying they're playing above their talent level, like obviously there are a lot of things with their team construction and just like the way their style of play allows them to do that consistently over the last couple of years. But because I don't think their talent level is as high as the Twins, it just makes it likelier that the Twins could run them down if they fall into a stretch of injury or poor play. I really respect what they've been able to do and the outcomes they're able to get. It just makes me think like you lean against them a little bit, and against a team that is really pretty stacked 1 through 9 lineup wise right now.
I like that the Red Sox are going to force the issue for Baltimore, New York, that they're going to have to do something. Because that was a concern that I wasn't seeing a lot of buyers in the American League maybe a month ago, because the division leads were so great that those teams like the Orioles, Yankees, Guardians, Mariners, they could just coast in, and whoever wanted the last 2 wild card spots could have them. But that's definitely not the case in the American League anymore. The Royals are 2 games back of the Red Sox, outside looking in for the postseason. Again, the Astros are a game back of Seattle, but they're 3.5 games back of the Red Sox. And I have a great deal of respect of Alex Cora. I think he's a very good manager. They are in a hot streak. New York hasn't been playing great baseball for a while now. Has it been, Jim? Like, they're having a bad month.
Pretty much. Yeah, they're 5-15 as of a few games ago. It's not getting any better.
And the Orioles have lost 7 of their last 10 games. They got swept at home by the Chicago Cubs resoundingly, like 21-2. They were outscored in that 3-game sweep. So maybe Boston's just taking advantage of 2 slumps for very strong teams of the Orioles and Yankees, and watch they drop back to like 8 games back. But if not, they could continue this hot streak and chase down the Orioles and Yankees. Maybe that helps out the White Sox, especially in an Eric Fetty trade, because I think the Guardians could use Eric Fetty. The Orioles could use Eric Fetty. Every contending team could use Eric Fetty. But I think when you have more teams in contention, especially in the American League, we know how crazy it is right now in the National League, especially with the wild card. But when you have tighter division races in the American League, that's where I think you can get more serious buyers. So thank you, Boston, for doing what you are doing. Thank you, Houston, in a way, for doing what you are doing and making things close. As I'm buying time here as I'm looking at the draft tracker. So as we record this, the 65th pick was just made by the Texas Rangers. They took my guy, Dylan Dreiling from Tennessee. The White Sox are 3 picks away. Who are you guys hoping for at pick 68?
Tyler Bell off the board. Another one of your guys.
Another one of my guys. Everyone that I wrote in that watch the 10 players for the White Sox are all going to get taken.
I wanted Tyler Bell because I've heard of him, and so that put him ahead of everybody. We'll say Bonemer was, being from Michigan, he was on the White Sox area codes team. That was one of the 2 big events he kind of went nuts on and performed really well. There was talking obviously with JJ Lally, who puts the area codes team together. That was he said, their best area codes team in years. So they expected to have a lot of picks come out of that. So he definitely performed well at periods of time where he had a lot of White Sox eyes on him.
That's awesome. Was JJ then the signing scout then?
I don't know, because he's cross-checker and not area guy now. So I think they'd probably give the credit to the area guy.
Got it. Okay. But how does that work? So JJ approves, or?
Yeah, he's like a higher level of check on, hey, we're interested in, I like him, I'm recommending him, running up the chain, and then JJ's the next level up from an area scout who would come in and say yeah, this guy's good. Let's
okay.
And then
yeah, Mike, we need to draft this guy. Got it. Yeah, we're waiting for the Brewers to make their 67th pick. Yeah, Tyler Bell's
Chris Lavonis to the Brewers.
All right, so the White Sox are on the clock with pick 68 as we record this Sunday night.
It was funnier when it was pick 69.
It was.
This is the Seattle pick, right? The Gregory Santos trade.
The key to that trade. It's not going well.
This is basically it.
Everything's riding on us. Yeah. Gregory Santos now pitching. So before it was just Santos on the 60-day injured list. So I guess it's better than what Santos is providing. But now that he's actually throwing for the Mariners, somebody's got to step up, even if it's cross-checker.
Well, how is Santos pitching for Seattle?
He just started. I think he just maybe has a game or 2 under his belt. So.
Okay. When you said just started, they converted him to a starting pitcher? No, he's made 2 appearances. Okay. Hasn't allowed a hit or a run, though, so pretty good. 2 strikeouts and a walk.
Oh, man, they got cooked.
Blake Larson.
All right, from IMG. So, a high school pitcher, lefty.
That's enough bats.
Yep, so there we go. Pitcher, bat, pitcher. So, first 3 picks, the White Sox only got 1 bat, but they go prep and back-to-back picks. While the White Sox are at IMG Academy, I wonder how much that they are watching Frank Thomas III. So Frank Thomas's kid is a freshman right now at IMG Academy, eligible for the 2027 MLB draft. So there you go. Blake Larson was the 96th ranked prospect in the Sox Machine Top 100.
Yeah, I have nothing to add. I'm looking at right now, 6'3" southpaw. Can run his fastball up 96. It's 93. So
the nice thing about
Powerish lefty.
Yeah, TCU commitment. Okay. Fast and Whippy. All right, I'm going to have to watch some film on YouTube. That's the nice thing about IMG. You can go to YouTube and you can find good film on these guys. So got some homework to do.
3 consecutive high school pitchers taken. So
just a low slot lefty.
Another one.
Yeah.
Brian Bannister's he's got his guys. He knows what he likes. And now we know. So we can circle those guys for next year's draft class and identify them and be more correct than I was in my mock draft guesses. But
East-West guys.
But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine podcast. Again, for all of our coverage of the Major League Baseball draft, that's going to be happening the next couple of days. I'm going to be writing recaps and all the players that the White Sox are adding to their farm system. It is the All-Star break as well. Home Run Derby on Monday. Tuesday's the All-Star game. We'll record a new episode Wednesday night because we'll be on our way to Kansas City next weekend for our annual road trip, and James will also be there covering the games at Kauffman Stadium between the White Sox and the Royals. Can't wait to see everybody in Kansas City. We've been sending out those communications of what our plans are for meeting up, especially on Saturday as we do the Negro League Museum Tour and the pregame party as well at the International Tap House in the Crossroads neighborhood of Kansas City, as we'll be at the games Friday and Saturday night as well. So if you're in the KC area and you decide to change your mind, yeah, I'll go to those games and see you guys. Can't wait to see everybody in Kansas City. But thank you for listening to this episode. If you just discovered the Sox Machine podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. You can also listen to the show on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Sox Machine. If you do listen to us on YouTube, please subscribe to our channel. It helps us greatly. You can follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. To gain full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, including the MLB draft, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. I had a lot of fun covering the draft. Your guys' support helps a great deal with our draft coverage as far as what we're able to get. And of course, it helps having James as well to gather more information and being part of the Zoom call so we get that information and feedback instantly from the Chicago White Sox. So for existing Patreon subscribers, thank you guys so much for your support through at least the first half of this season.
And Josh, thank you for your draft coverage, your college baseball amateur coverage. Basically get all my familiarity with these players through you, because I personally do not have the bandwidth to follow it that closely, aside from just like the top guys. So thanks for all the work you did on the good season, and take a break.
Well, no, I won't, because I have so much film of Hagen Smith that I could make gifts now. And for anyone that's like, I didn't get a chance to watch Hagen Smith, I just see what I see on YouTube. Oh, you are in luck. I have so much video content on Hagen Smith that I'll be able to share. And Arkansas.
Okay, then don't take a break.
Yeah, Arkansas's got a really good analytics team as well, a good development team that we can get more information from them. So we'll have more data. So we'll know more about the new guy for the White Sox that they took 5th overall and joining the farm system. But again, if you enjoy our coverage and you want full access to everything that we do regarding the Chicago White Sox, sign up at patreon.com/Sox Machine. The Sox Machine podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're in for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside James Fegan and Jim Margulis, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.
When you drive a vehicle so reliable it's backed by a 10-year, 100,000-mile limited warranty, you stop thinking about what you can't do and start doing what you never thought possible. Visit your local Kia dealer today to see what you're capable of in a vehicle that inspires confidence around every corner. Kia, movement that inspires.
Call 800-333-4KIA for details. Always drive safely. Limited inventory available. Warranties include 10-year 100,000-mile powertrain and 5-year 60,000-mile basic. Warranties are limited. See retailer for details.